Hi, I'm Sydney, and I'm a servant of the Almighty God. In this episode, in the continuing series on recognizing God's omnipotence, I want to speak about pollination. Now, several of the things, or matter of fact, most of the things I speak about in these episodes would seem commonplace, and they are in fact commonplace. But it's one of the things that, going back to that whole premise that we seem to operate under now of nature and random being responsible, a closer look at any of these, it becomes very clear that there is an advanced intelligence involved in the design of all of these parts of our ecosystem. So speaking of just pollination, which is of course responsible for a lot of the food, if not most of the food that we consume, pollination is a very, very sophisticated and in many cases very, very specific type of operation. So normally it involves, besides just the wind pollination where you have plants, they have a normal part of a plant, a flower, and it needs to be pollinated so that it produces a fruit, whether it's a seed or some fruit that can be consumed immediately. But when we look closer, we see many times there is a symbiotic relationship between the plant that needs to be pollinated and something else. That something else varies, and in many cases it's very, very specific. So on the one hand, again, and this flies in the face of this concept of random occurrence, and this is where, and now I refer to nature as the manifestation of God's omnipotence. Because what we see are plants that produce a reward, right? It's part of a system where this plant either produces nectar or a fruit or something, right? Even coloration is designed to attract that pollinator. So we, in many cases, and again, this goes across, much of the animal species, because there are mammals that pollinate. There are even reptiles like geckos and lizards, and in many cases, as we know, of birds and bees and flies. But the plant produces something to attract the pollinator. So it actually gives a reward. And in many cases, the relationship is so specific, as in the case of, we have these hummingbirds that have these very, very long beaks, or almost like a proboscis, or the butterflies that can reach into the plant, and in that process, the plant is designed to spread to get that pollen onto that animal, which is reaching for basically the reward. So the plant provides a reward, and in many cases it's very specific. So you have, in many cases, birds, bees, butterflies that are equipped with, and you see that relationship where only this bee, this bird, this butterfly with this special equipment is only that specific animal can get to that nectar, get to that which the plant provides, and in the process the plant places, or that animal then gets a layer of that pollen, which it takes to another plant, and results in that pollination of, and the propagation of that species. This, again, it seems very, very normal. It's just like hibernation. It's like so many processes around us, water, the ozone layer. All of these things we are very used to, and even without science, we observe them. But as we look closer, what we see is the design of those plants. The fact that they create, in many cases, a very specific symbiotic relationship with certain animals. As in the case of you have these hummingbirds that have the extended, they, and only they can get to that nectar. Meanwhile, they get showered with the pollen that they take to another plant. These are specific examples. We have butterflies, bees, like I said, lizards, geckos, all of these things, but we see a design on the animal and the plant where they both benefit. The plant rewards the animal. Now think about this. In a random system, how does that come about? How does it come about that you have this bird that reaches in and it has this elongated structure to reach to that nectar? And as it reaches, now it's only because of this elongated beak, that it as it reaches in there, it gets the pollen on its head, so that it goes to another plant and deposits, so you have that cross-pollination occurring. Again, it sounds very easy and simple to say, nature did that. Well, then, again, when you think of nature as the manifestation of God's omnipotence, of course. But in our random nature, how does you have to have the injection of some intelligence, something that says this plant needs an animal with certain attributes, and so this animal, which do we attribute that intelligence to the plant or to the animal, or did they come up with some system where they both decided, well, here is a plant that needs this, and so this animal decides, and it's almost like they have this communication where the plant says, look, I need this, and the plant and the bird, the bee, the butterfly says, okay, I will provide that. We know that we don't attribute that type of intelligence to plants or what we consider the lower animals. We don't. What we observe and what is normal for us is what we call nature, the manifestation of God's omnipotence, His design. He designed both the plant, the coloration of that plant, the very structure, the very structure of that plant that requires this specific animal. He also designed the animal with the attributes. And so that animal then can fit that niche so that we can benefit from all of these designs within this ecosystem. We need to recognize that intelligence. We need to recognize that all that we claim to be nature are manifestations of God's omnipotence. Again, there will be many examples, and as you look around, you will find many, many examples. But specific to pollination, we see that symbiotic relationship between plant and animal that could not be the result of some random process. What we see here is intelligent design, the manifestation of God's omnipotence. So in time, we have to revert to recognizing His handiwork, His omnipotence. I want to thank you for taking the time to reviewing this, and once again remind you that this is not a coincidence. This is a result of decisions that you've made that got you to recognizing God's omnipotence in everything around us. I want to thank you for taking the time, and until, may God bless. Thank you.